The grand ballroom of the Windsor Grand Hotel glittered, beneath enormous crystal chandeliers as the city's most powerful executives, politicians, military officers, and billionaire investors gathered for Mitchell Defense Technologies' annual charity gala. Every guest wore designer tuxedos and elegant evening gowns, while photographers lined the entrance capturing every arrival. It was the most exclusive event of the year, hosted by Claire Mitchell, the brilliant young CEO whose company had recently become the leading contender for a $1.2 billion U.S. defense contract. The contract would transform her company into one of the largest defense manufacturers in the country, and tonight's gala was meant to celebrate that success while impressing government officials attending the event. Inside the ballroom, Claire moved gracefully from guest to guest in a stunning navy blue evening gown, greeting senators, military generals, and international investors with perfect confidence. Everything had been planned down to the smallest detail. The media praised her leadership. Shareholders admired her vision, and government representatives quietly evaluated whether Mitchell Defense Technologies deserved the historic contract. Nothing could go wrong. At exactly 7:15 p.m., the ballroom doors opened once again. A tall, well-built man in a simple light gray business suit quietly walked inside, carrying nothing more than a black leather portfolio. His polished shoes were clean but modest, and unlike everyone else, he wore no expensive watch or designer accessories. His calm eyes carefully observed the room before he approached the registration desk. "My name is Ethan Carter," he said politely. "I believe I'm expected." The hostess searched the guest list. Nothing appeared. She checked again. Still nothing. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said nervously. "Your name isn't on the invitation list. There must be some mistake. I'm afraid I can't let you enter." Their conversation quietly caught Claire's attention from across the ballroom. Already under enormous pressure to impress government officials, she walked toward the entrance, slightly irritated by the unexpected interruption. "What's happening?" she asked. The hostess explained the situation. Claire looked Ethan up and down. He certainly didn't look like the billionaire executives surrounding her. She folded her arms. "This is a private event." "I understand," Ethan replied calmly. "I was personally asked to deliver something." "What exactly?" He lifted the black portfolio slightly. "I was told it contains important documents for tonight." Claire frowned. "If they're important, they would have arrived through official channels." "They didn't." "I'm sorry," she said firmly. "Without an invitation, you can't stay." Ethan remained completely calm. "I only need 5 minutes." "I'm afraid not." Several wealthy guests had already begun watching. Whispers spread through the ballroom. "Who is he?" "Probably another salesman." "Security should remove him." Claire glanced toward the nearby security team. "Escort him outside." 2 large security officers immediately stepped forward and gently took hold of Ethan's arms. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He simply looked directly at Claire and quietly said, "I truly hope you don't regret this decision." Claire answered confidently, "I won't." As security escorted Ethan toward the ballroom exit, dozens of influential guests watched in silence. No one realized. The quiet single father being removed from the gala wasn't an ordinary visitor. And within the next hour, Claire Mitchell's biggest business victory was about to become the most devastating mistake of her entire career. The ballroom doors closed behind Ethan as the 2 security guards escorted him into the marble lobby. He thanked them politely, adjusted the black leather portfolio under his arm, and walked toward the exit without looking back. The guards exchanged confused glances. Most people who were thrown out of an event argued, complained, or demanded to speak to someone in charge. Ethan did none of those things. He simply stepped outside, sat quietly on a bench overlooking the hotel's entrance, and looked at his phone. After reading one message, he sighed softly and placed the portfolio beside him. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, the orchestra resumed playing. Champagne glasses were raised once again, and Claire convinced herself she had handled the situation perfectly. She couldn't afford distractions. Tonight, not when government officials were only minutes away from announcing the shortlist for the $1.2 billion defense contract. Smiling confidently, she welcomed the audience onto the stage and began speaking about innovation. national security, and the future of Mitchell Defense Technologies. The guests applauded enthusiastically, unaware that the most important person, connected to the contract, was no longer inside the building. Just as Claire finished her speech, the ballroom doors opened once more. Every conversation stopped as 3 senior government officials entered, alongside several military officers. Cameras immediately turned toward them. Claire smiled warmly and walked over to greet the delegation. "Welcome," she said confidently. "We're honored to have you here." The lead official shook her hand but quickly looked around the ballroom. "Ms. Mitchell," he asked, "where is Mr. Ethan Carter?" Claire frowned. "I'm sorry, who?" The official looked surprised. "The independent systems consultant assigned to deliver the final security certification package." Claire's smile faded. "He never arrived." One of the military officers exchanged an uneasy glance with another before quietly saying, "That's impossible. He checked in at the front desk 20 minutes ago." Suddenly, the hostess near the entrance turned pale. She slowly raised her hand and whispered, "Sir, I think he was the gentleman we escorted out." Silence swept across the ballroom. Claire's heartbeat quickened as she looked toward the security guards. One of them reluctantly nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He was carrying a black portfolio and said he needed 5 minutes." The lead government official closed his eyes in disappointment. That portfolio contained the final, encrypted compliance approval required before tonight's contract review. Without those certified documents, your company's bid is considered incomplete. A wave of panic spread across the room. Claire's confident expression disappeared completely. For the first time that evening, she realized the quiet, single father she had dismissed wasn't trying to enter her gala for attention. He had been carrying the one document that could determine the future of her entire company. Without wasting another second, Claire rushed toward the ballroom exit, praying Ethan Carter hadn't already left. Claire ran through the crowded hotel lobby, ignoring the confused looks from executives and reporters following behind her. Her heart pounded as she reached the grand entrance. But the marble steps outside were empty. The bench where Ethan had been sitting only moments earlier was vacant. She looked desperately toward the valet area until one of the hotel attendants pointed toward the parking lot. "Ma'am," he called out, "I think that's him." Claire turned and saw Ethan standing beside an old silver pickup truck, calmly placing the black leather portfolio on the passenger seat. She hurried toward him, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Carter." "Please wait!" Ethan stopped and looked back with the same calm expression he had worn all evening. Claire finally reached him, struggling to catch her breath. I made a terrible mistake," she admitted. "I judged you before I even listened to you." Ethan remained silent. She continued, "The government officials told me who you are and why you came. I'm truly sorry." Ethan looked at the portfolio for a moment before speaking quietly. "I wasn't offended because you asked me to leave. I was disappointed because you never gave me 5 minutes to explain." Claire lowered her eyes, ashamed. "You're right." Around them, reporters had begun gathering, sensing that something important was happening. Claire ignored every camera pointed in her direction. "Please," she said sincerely, "come back inside. The contract committee is waiting, and my company needs those documents." Ethan studied her face for a few seconds before asking, "Do you want me back because of the documents, or because you finally believe I deserve to be heard?" Claire didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked him directly in the eyes and said, "Both." For the first time that evening, Ethan gave a faint smile. "That's the honest answer." He picked up the portfolio and walked beside her toward the ballroom. As they entered through the grand doors together, hundreds of guests turned to watch. Only an hour earlier, the same man had been escorted out by security. Now, the CEO herself walked beside him with visible respect. The ballroom fell completely silent as Ethan calmly approached the government delegation, placed the black leather portfolio on the table, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, your security certification package is complete." The lead official opened the folder, carefully reviewed the documents, and nodded with satisfaction. Then he looked toward Claire and quietly said, "Ms. Mitchell, before we continue, there is something about Mr. Carter that everyone in this room should know." The entire ballroom waited in silence, unaware that Ethan's true identity would surprise every person present. The lead government official slowly closed the portfolio and looked across the silent ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "most of you believe Mr. Ethan Carter is simply a courier who delivered paperwork tonight. That couldn't be further from the truth." Every guest fixed their eyes on Ethan, the official continued. "Mr. Carter is one of the country's most respected independent defense systems consultants. For the past 15 years, he has advised government agencies and major defense contractors on security compliance, cybersecurity integration, and military procurement standards. His signature on these documents isn't a formality. It is one of the final requirements for approving a contract of this magnitude." A wave of whispers spread through the room. The same executives who had ignored Ethan earlier now looked at him with stunned expressions. Claire stood motionless, realizing she had dismissed the very person whose approval carried enormous weight in the government's evaluation process. The official then turned toward Claire. "There is another reason Mr. Carter's opinion matters. Every company bidding for this $1.2 billion defense contract is evaluated not only on technology, but also on leadership, ethics, and decision-making under pressure. Tonight was never just a gala. It was part of our assessment." Claire's face turned pale. "Assessment?" she whispered. The official nodded. "We wanted to see how senior leadership treated people they believed had no influence. Unfortunately, your first decision was to judge a man by his appearance instead of listening to him." The ballroom became completely silent. Claire slowly stepped toward Ethan, her voice filled with genuine regret. "Mr. Carter, I owe you a sincere apology. I let pressure and appearances cloud my judgment. I failed to show the leadership I expect from everyone else." Ethan looked at her calmly before replying. "Leadership isn't measured by how we treat powerful people. It's measured by how we treat those we believe have nothing to offer us." The government officials exchanged approving glances. The lead evaluator smiled slightly before making the final announcement. "Ms. Mitchell, your company still possesses outstanding technology, and thanks to Mr. Carter delivering the certification package. Before the review officially closed, your bid remains eligible. However, tonight's events will become part of our leadership evaluation." Claire nodded respectfully, accepting full responsibility. She then turned toward the audience and publicly said, "From this day forward, no employee, visitor, or guest will ever be judged by appearance at any Mitchell defense event again." The room erupted into applause. Ethan quietly picked up his portfolio, shook hands with the officials, and prepared to leave. Before he reached the exit, Claire called after him, "Mr. Carter, thank you for giving me a second chance to become the leader." "I should have been from the beginning." Ethan smiled warmly. "Everyone deserves a second chance when they're willing to learn from their first mistake." As he walked out of the grand ballroom, the applause continued behind him. The most valuable lesson of the evening had nothing to do with a $1.2 billion contract. It was that integrity, humility, and respect are the true foundations of leadership.